Hello and welcome. I'm Sachin Brahme with Avaya Serviceability Engineering. In this video, we'll see how to set up and use the post-update feature in Avaya Proactive Contact. Post-update is a very useful feature to track the details of the calls made to a phone number. Also known as due diligence, it is helpful to prove when and how many times a customer's phone number was called out of the calling list. It tracks the date and time of the call and also the completion code the record was disposed of with. Although the editor application will allow you to track a maximum of 9 call attempts on each phone field, Avaya recommends to keep it to maximum 5 attempts for a maximum of 4 phone fields. It tracks the date and time and completion code for each call. That means 3 call list fields for each call. So for 5 attempts and for 4 phone fields each, it will mean total of 60 calling list fields. And if you track more number of attempts or for more phone fields, that would mean more calling list fields, which increases the overhead on the system. And so that's why it is recommended to have maximum of 5 attempts for maximum of 4 phone fields. The next slide contains a similar setup. It is showing you the post-update fields for 4 phones, phone 1, 2, 3 and 4. And for each phone, it is tracking 5 call attempts. The ones highlighted here are depicting that these fields are for phone 1, etc. So for example, for phone 1, it has first date 1, first time 1 and first stat 1 fields, which are for the first call made on phone 1. Similarly, for the second call on phone 1, it has the fields second date 1, second time 1, second stat 1, and so on and so forth. And the similar fields are there for all the 4 phone fields. Now before we go ahead and see how we configure it through the editor, I also want to show you some lookalike fields which are actually not post-update fields. So on this slide you can see the last fields. These contain the data for the very last call made on that phone. For example, the last fields for phone 1 will contain the date, time and completion code for the last call made on phone 1. And similarly there will be these fields for other phones also. So it's possible that if you have, let's say, 10 phone fields, you will have these last fields for all 10 phones by default. But still the post-update fields will be only for the number of phones and number of attempts that you configure them for, which is 5 attempts and 4 phones as recommended. There is another set of fields, the DTE, TME and code. These contain the data for the very last call made on that customer's record, irrespective of which phone field was called. Another important thing to note here is that these last fields and the DTE, TME and code fields are written immediately by the job after the call is over. But the post-update fields are written by the post-update process, which runs automatically only after the job is shut down. So if you are trying to query the post-update fields using something like a PC analysis extract, you will not see the data populated in the post-update fields until the job has stopped. But you will still see the data in the last fields and the DTE, TME code field, etc. while the job is on. Now let's go over to the editor application and see the configuration. So on the editor application, I'm creating a new calling list. I've already created the download dictionary for this list. Now when I do a right click and go over to the calling list details, under the features tab, you will see the post update section. I will check this checkbox to turn on this feature. Now for the settings, for the number of phones, I will say 2 as my calling list has 2 phones, phone 1 and phone 2. For the number of attempts, I'll say 5, which is the maximum recommended value. Then for the order of maintaining attempts history, you will see 2 options, keep initial attempts and overwrite initial attempts. That is, keep the first attempts or keep the last attempts. We'll talk about this difference between the two in a while. Let me choose the method F here, that is keep initial attempts. And for the next setting, update record codes, you can choose the completion codes for which you want the post update to track the data. Typically you would select all codes because you would like the post update to track the data for all calls made irrespective of what completion codes were they disposed of with. So I will select all codes here. Then after saving this configuration, I'll go over to the calling list dictionary tab and do a right click and go to import from download dictionary. And then you'll see the post update fields are also appearing there now. You can see there are 2 phones and 5 attempts. So this was the configuration required for the calling list to create the post update fields. Once you save this list now, it will be ready with the post update fields. Now there is one more configuration required on the job side. So on the editor application, I have opened a job. Under the post processing section, you'll have to edit the parameter record update program name and type post update in lowercase. Please note that if you're not able to see this parameter on your editor, it might need to be turned on by editing a configuration file in the backend. Once you save the job, and next time when the job runs and shuts down, it will run the post update process automatically. Now let's talk about the update modes in the maintaining attempts history setting, which we saw earlier. As we saw, there are two options: keep initial attempts, that is first to last, which is also called as update mode F, and overwrite initial attempts, that is last to first, which is called as update mode L. In the update mode F, that is keep initial attempts setting, it tracks the first X number of attempts which you have set. So for the first call goes into the first fields, the second in the second field, and so on and so forth. So in this example, there are 5 attempts being tracked in the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth fields in that order. And for the 6th call onwards, the data is not tracked. We have an example in the next slide showing the phone 1 attempts. So you can see there were total 7 calls, and the first 5 calls have been populated in the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth fields in that order. And the 6th and the 7th call data have not been populated. But the last fields contain the data for the last call made on the 7th call. So this is how the fields are tracked for the mode F, that is for the keep initial attempts setting. Now let's talk about the other mode, that is mode L, or overwrite initial attempt setting. This setting tracks the last X number of attempts. It starts populating from the bottom. The first call goes into the 5th fields. When the second call happens, it pushes the data upwards from the bottom. So the data in the 5th field is moved to the 4th fields, and the data for the second call is populated in the 5th field. Similarly, when the third call happens, it pushes the data further upwards from the bottom, and the third call is noted in the 5th field. Now when the 6th call happens, it still pushes data further from the bottom so that the data in the first fields is purged out, and the 6th call data is noted in the 5th fields, and so on and so forth. The next slide shows a similar example where you have fields for 5 attempts and total 7 calls have been made. So you can see the very last call, that is the 7th call, is noted in the 5th fields. The 4th fields contain the 6th call, and so on. And the data for the first and the second call have been purged out. The last fields, as usual, contain the very last call, that is the 7th call. So we saw how to turn on the post update on a calling list, how to turn it on the job side, and we also saw how the 2 modes of post update track the call data. That concludes this demonstration. Thank you for watching this video. For any questions or feedback, you may write to us at mentor@avaya.com or at Avaya Mentor on Twitter. For more details or other technical information, please visit support.avaya.com. Thank you for choosing Avaya.